They said the war was over. They lied. Smoke curled from the distant wreckage of a drone carrier, its skeletal remains etched into the crimson horizon like a warning. I watched from the fractured glass of my outpost dome, breath fogging the surface. I hadn't slept in 2 days. Not since the last dropship broke apart in the upper stratosphere, raining pieces of men, metal, and memory down onto the sands of Alaris 4. My name's Calder Rhett. Or at least, that's what they used to call me. Out here, names don't mean much. Just echoes of a life I've tried hard to forget. The heat outside pressed against the dome like a suffocating hand, but inside, the temperature was barely survivable thanks to the auxiliary coolant system I ripped from a wrecked cryopod. Half the systems were fried from electromagnetic storms. The rest were eaten alive by rust. I patched together what I could. A soldier's life doesn't allow for luxury, only survival. When she knocked, it wasn't a knock at all. It was more like a hum, a low-frequency vibration pulsing through the dome's frame. At first, I thought it was another quake. Then the pattern repeated. 3 quick bursts, 1 pause, then 2 longer. I slid my pulse rifle from its sling and approached the hatch. My finger hovered near the trigger. Out here, nobody knocks unless they mean to kill you. Or worse. The outer door creaked open under manual override. Standing there, tall, draped in layered cerulean fabrics that shifted with the breeze, was a figure unlike any I'd seen on this planet. She wasn't human. That much was obvious. But she wasn't like the others either. Her skin was the color of polished opal, glistening under Alaris's twin moons. Her eyes, a soft amethyst, held sorrow deeper than the ravines carved by orbital strikes. At her side stood 2 small forms. Children, clearly. Frightened. Thin. Wrapped in scavenged scraps of thermal cloth. One clung to her leg, the other peeked from behind her cloak, black eyes watching me without blinking. "I do not mean harm," the woman said. Her voice was melodic, laced with a vibration that settled into my bones rather than my ears. "You're a long way from the northern valleys," I said, stepping aside. "You've got 5 seconds to explain why you're at my door." She hesitated, not in fear, but in calculation. Then she bowed her head. "We are exiled. Hunters destroyed our enclave. My mate fell defending it. My sons grow weak. I heard of you. The human with fire in his veins. They say you do not turn away those in need." I narrowed my eyes. "They're wrong. I turn away most." Her eyes met mine. "Will you turn away a widow?" Something about the way she said it, soft, final, like an ancient ritual being spoken aloud for the last time, made my grip on the rifle loosen. I stepped back. "Come inside, but keep your hands where I can see them." She entered silently. The boys shuffled behind her, no taller than my waist, their pale hair matted with dust. The dome was sparse, just a cot, some field gear, a cracked monitor looping static from a long-dead satellite feed. I offered a protein ration. The younger boy snatched it, devouring it before I could blink. The older one watched me with a maturity beyond his years. "What's your name?" I asked her, seating myself on a crate. "Names do not hold the same weight where I come from," she replied, kneeling beside her children. "But you may call me Sayalari." "Sayalari," I repeated, tasting the syllables. It sounded like wind passing through hollow stone. "And theirs?" "Ilren," she said, placing a hand on the older boy's shoulder. "And the younger is Tevin." "Why, me?" I asked bluntly. "Why not another outpost? There's one 40 clicks south." "They are dead," she said simply. "Ah." I stood and paced. My mind raced. If her enclave was attacked by those rogue hunter units, mercenaries turned warlords, then she'd be hunted too, and now she'd led them straight to me. "Anyone follow you?" I asked, peering through the fractured dome panels. "No," she said, but I wasn't convinced. I activated the perimeter drones. They whirred to life and zipped into the dusk like silent sentinels. I couldn't afford a firefight, not with kids around, and yet I didn't tell them to leave. That night, I gave them my cot and slept sitting against the wall, pulse rifle across my knees. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, the older boy, Ilrin, stood outside the dome, staring at the ash-covered plains. "Will the monsters come?" he asked me without turning around. "They always do," I answered. He nodded, as if that made sense. "Then I will help you fight." I frowned. "You're 9, maybe 10. "I am 11 cycles," he said. "My father taught me to wield a fang blade." I believed him. His posture was that of someone trained to survive. I'd seen the same stance in child soldiers back on Velimar. It haunted me then. It haunted me now. Inside, Sayalari was repairing one of the broken coolant nodes. I watched, impressed. Her long fingers worked quickly, efficiently. She used melted hull resin as sealant, rewired a circuit using scavenged capacitors. "Where'd you learn that?" I asked. "My mate," she replied, not looking up. "He built shelters for our people." "Sorry," I said awkwardly. She paused, then continued working. "He was kind. Too kind. That is why they killed him first." I didn't know what to say to that. Over the next few days, they stayed. I told myself it was temporary, that once they were strong enough, I'd send them off. But something in me shifted. Ilrin followed me on patrol. Tevin began stacking salvage, mimicking my movements with curious fascination. And Sayalari, she fixed more in a week than I had in months. The dome began to feel less empty. I hated that. Then, on the 6th night, the sky turned green. Aurora storms weren't natural on Alaris 4, not anymore, not unless a ship was descending. Through atmosphere with unshielded plasma thrusters, I raced outside, binoculars to my face. A frigate. Not friendly, no insignia, no transponder, pirates. "They're coming," I muttered. Sayalari stood beside me, her face unreadable. "They won't stop." I tightened the grip on my rifle. "Then neither will I. We prepared as best we could." I rigged the perimeter with mines, rewired the pulse cannons from an old scout pod. Ilrin helped. Tevin carried ammo. Sayalari sharpened old carbon blades and embedded them into trap casings. She didn't flinch. "Not once." "I thought you were a builder's mate," I said. She looked me in the eye. "I was also a commander once. Before the surrender. Before we were forced to bow." I stared at her, reevaluating everything I thought I knew. "You should take the kids and run," I said. "I have already run enough," she replied. The attack came at dawn. 3 dropships, heavily armed, 8 mercs in exosuits. They moved like wolves, scanning, flanking, preparing to breach. I took the first one out with a trip mine, the second with a shoulder-fired missile I'd salvaged 2 years ago. Then the firefight started. Flashes of plasma. Screams. Smoke. Ilrin screamed from behind the barricade. Sayalari rushed forward, blade in hand, slicing through a distracted invader with a shriek that curdled my blood. She wasn't a widow. She was a fury. By the end of it, 5 of them were dead. 2 fled. 1 lay pinned beneath rubble, screaming for mercy. Sayalari walked up to him, lifted her blade, and looked to me. I nodded. She ended him swiftly. After the smoke cleared, we buried the bodies in a pit and burned their gear. The dome was damaged, but intact. As I sat by the dying fire that night, she approached me, quietly, barefoot, hair still tangled with soot. "I know what comes next," she whispered. "What do you mean?" "You will tell us to leave, that it is too dangerous, that you work alone, that we slow you down." I didn't say anything. She knelt beside me. "But I will make you an offer." I looked at her. "I will warm your bed, human. I will give you no burdens, only strength. My children need a father, and you need something to fight for that isn't made of steel and fire." I swallowed hard. "You don't know me." "I know enough. You are broken. So are we." Her hand touched mine, warm, trembling. Not in fear, but in hope. "I am not asking for love," she said. "Just a chance, a reason to live." The fire cracked. Outside, the ashes danced on the wind, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. The next morning, I woke up to silence. Not the kind of silence you get in deep space or inside a bunker after a blackout. This was the kind that pressed against your chest like an invisible weight, like the planet itself was holding its breath. SCI-FI was already outside with Ilrin, training him in hand-to-hand strikes using a blade carved from a drone's wing strut. The boy moved like he was born with purpose, focused, lethal. Teven sat beside a stack of ruined comm panels, humming to himself while pretending to weld circuits with a dead soldering wand. I hadn't said yes to her offer, but I hadn't said no either. The fire had burned down to embers, but the memory of her voice still lingered in the air. "I will warm your bed, human." I shook the thought away and stepped into the morning heat, pulse pistol slung low on my thigh. That's when I saw the plume of dust. Low, slow, unnatural. Someone else was coming. We hid the children inside the repurposed cargo container buried, beneath the dome, rigged with a silent alarm and a manual oxygen filter. SCI-FI watched the horizon with her blade drawn, stance wide. Every fiber of her looked like instinct wrapped in grief. I grabbed the scope. It wasn't another warband. It was a hover rig, civilian model, rusted, patched, and bleeding exhaust. And it was flying a white strip. A truce signal. "Should we shoot it anyway?" SCI-FI asked flatly. "Tempting," I muttered. "But let's see what they want." The rig landed 30 paces from the dome. Dust curled away like it was afraid to touch us. The door opened. Out stepped a woman in a composite suit made of mismatched Federation armor and scavenged tech. She had a scar that ran from temple to jaw, crossing her lips like a stitched memory. Her eyes, artificial, glowed pale green. "You're Calderette?" she asked, voice sharp as monofilament. "Depends who's asking." "Name's Brigden Tess. Used to be with Skyforge Division." I lowered my rifle a fraction. "Used to?" "They dissolved after the ceasefire. You know how it goes. Peace breaks things faster than war." I glanced at SCI-FI. She hadn't relaxed. Brigden followed my gaze. "Didn't realize you had company." "She's not a threat." Brigden raised an eyebrow. "Funny, I thought that about you once." I frowned. "What do you want?" "I came to warn you. There's movement in orbit. Fracture Lords are regrouping. They've got a signal sweeping across the abandoned relays, pinging old Hunter Unit IDs. Someone's trying to reactivate sleeper agents." That caught my attention. Sleeper agents. The war's worst legacy. Augmented warriors built from the bones of volunteers and prisoners alike, wired with kill protocols, reactivated by signal bursts coded in dead languages. I'd seen one once. "It took a planetary cannon to stop it." "I thought they were all decommissioned," I said. Brigden shook her head. "Someone found the override key. Rumor is they're testing it on fringe colonies. This place? You're sitting in the center of an old vault grid." My blood ran cold. The kids. SCI-FI. Me. We were bait without even knowing it. That night, I pulled the old comm uplink from the dome's core and rebooted it using a salvaged neural drive. SCI-FI sat beside me, watching the screen blink. "You think they'll—" "Come here," she asked. "I know they will. Then we must leave." I shook my head. "No. If we run, they follow. If we stay, we choose the battlefield." She looked at me. Truly looked. "You are not like other humans." "You don't know many," she smiled faintly. "I know you now." That smile did something strange to me, like acid on old scars. She reached for my hand, and this time I didn't pull away. The signal came at dawn. Not a ship, a sound. Low, rhythmic, like a whisper you couldn't quite hear. It vibrated the bones. Teven screamed in his sleep. Ilrin clutched his ears and dropped to the floor. SCI-FI staggered, blood trickling from her nose. I turned the dome's shielding to max, but it wasn't enough. The signal was inside. "They're waking something," I said through gritted teeth. Outside, the wind began to howl, the ground shook, and then the trap door blew open. From beneath the sands, a form emerged. Tall, armored, not natural. It stood on 2 legs but moved like liquid iron. No eyes, only sensors blinking behind obsidian glass. Each movement pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, perfectly synced to the signal. "Wake protocol, Theta Prime," it said in a voice that wasn't a voice at all, just pure, raw command broadcast into the mind. Salari pulled Tevin behind her. Ilrin grabbed a makeshift spear. I raised my rifle. Target, Calder Ret. Execute directive, reclamation. "Directive this," I snarled and fired. The first shot hit center mass, did nothing. The second ricocheted. The third lodged in a joint, buying me seconds. It moved like lightning, crashing through crates, tearing metal like paper. I ducked, rolled, fired again. Salari leapt onto its back, slamming her blade between armor plates. Sparks erupted. The thing screamed, or maybe that was just the sound of dying code. Ilrin stabbed it in the leg. Tevin hit it with a wrench. It swatted them aside like dust. I fired a shock round into its back. It staggered. Salari yanked out a circuit module with a cry of rage. It collapsed, but only for a moment. Then it rebooted. "We can't kill it!" I shouted. Salari dragged the boys toward the underground tunnel. "Then we trap it!" I ran toward the generator room, flipping every surge capacitor to overload. The dome began to shudder. "This'll cook us too," I muttered. "Hope the Sam afterlife has whiskey." The thing chased me through the halls, unrelenting, silent, cold. At the last second, I dove into the shaft and hit the trigger. White light swallowed the corridor. Silence followed. When I came to, I was in the cargo container. Sayalari was bandaging my arm. Tevin slept curled beside me. Ilren stood watch. "You're awake," she said. I blinked. Did we win? No, but we survived. That's a start. She leaned closer. "You risked everything for us." I looked into her eyes. "You gave me something to fight for." She hesitated, then touched her forehead to mine, a gesture I didn't recognize but instinctively returned. Later, under the fractured dome of stars, I watched Sayalari whisper to her sons, tucking them beneath the survival blankets. She stood and walked to me. Her voice was quiet. "My people believed the stars told stories, that every soul was a light, and when 2 burned in rhythm, they were bound. I didn't believe in fate, but I believed in moments, and in that moment, I knew I couldn't let her go. Not now, not ever." The dust hadn't settled. Not in the dome, not in my lungs, not in the spaces between thoughts where old ghosts lived. The awakened sleeper unit lay buried beneath 20 tons of molten wreckage from the generator room. But I wasn't fool enough to think it was over. Not after hearing the activation protocol broadcast through Marrow. Not after seeing Sayalari bleeding and still fighting like something divine had possessed her. We sealed the dome as best we could. The damage was extensive. Support struts twisted, insulation ruptured, comms blacked out again. Tevin cried in his sleep that night. Ilrin stood by the hatch, cradling a makeshift spear like it was the last truth in a world built on lies. I sat, across from Sayalari wrapping synth bondage around my ribs. I'd fractured something in the blast. She didn't speak for a while. Then, softly, "There will be more." "Yeah," I replied, exhaling pain. "They won't stop until they have what they're looking for." She glanced at me. "And what? Is that Calder?" I looked into her eyes and said the thing I'd been trying not to. Me. When I was conscripted, I volunteered for the Sevron trials, genetic augmentation for recon specialists. They rewrote our nerves with hyperreactive fibers, integrated combat algorithms into our hippocampus, turned memory into weaponry. But the price wasn't just physical. They installed an anchor protocol. If one of us went rogue or tried to desert, they could activate the kill switch buried beneath a coded personality layer, but I never activated it. I didn't go rogue. I just disappeared. After the ceasefire, I buried my dog tags, burned the authorization beacon, and left the rest of the world behind. But someone had found me. Someone wanted their investment back. It started again at dusk. A ping. Subtle, like a phantom tapping on the inside of my skull. It wasn't loud, but it was invasive, like someone tuning a frequency in my blood. Sayalari saw the shift in me. "What is it?" "They're calling me." She touched my temple. "Then do not answer. I may not have a choice." The ping returned, sharper this time. Coordinates bloomed in my thoughts, numbers cascading across my vision like cold data. A location, not far from here. In the rusted basin of the Trilix mines. A trap, clearly, but sometimes you walk into a trap, not because you're foolish, but because you want to know who set it. I told Sayalari to stay. She refused. "I have followed my mate into fire. I will follow you into shadow." Tevan and Ilrin were left with Brigden Tess, who had returned the day after the assault with 3 more mercs and a hovering med rig. She offered backup. I declined. "I need to do this clean," I told her. "You show up with guns, they go silent." Brigden spat in the dust. "You get killed. I'm telling your war widow you tripped over your own ego," I smirked. "Fair." We reached the basin by mid-morning. A crater of broken metal, once a thriving extraction site, now nothing but silence and bones. That's where we found him. A man in a black coat standing beside a war-torn console, his face hidden beneath a breathing mask. One eye glowed crimson, the other was missing entirely. "I thought it might be you," he said, turning slowly. "Calder Rhett, the specter of Charian sector. The knife in the sand." I knew that voice. "General Draxil Ven," I said coldly. "Didn't you die screaming on Bellicor Prime?" His lips curled under the mask. "That's what the report said. But men like me, we tend to outlive reports." Sayalari tensed. Her hand hovered near her blade. "You activated the protocol," I said. "You used the override." "I had to. You see, they're rebuilding the initiative. Quietly, carefully. And we need soldiers who remember what war really is." I stepped closer. "You made monsters. And you were one of the best. You're insane." "No," he said calmly. "I'm practical. The galaxy doesn't need peace, it needs order." He held out a small black shard, thin, sharp, humming. "The key to all the sleepers. Join us, reactivate them, reclaim the fire that made you." I stared at it. Then I shot it out of his hand. Chaos erupted. Draxil darted behind cover. Twin automatons lunged from the mine shafts, armored and relentless. Sayalari moved first, leaping, forward, blade spinning in a fluid arc, slicing one at the knee. Sparks flew. I tossed her a detonation pin. She embedded it into the unit's chest. Boom. The second bot charged me. I ducked, rolled, emptied half a clip into its optic array. It screamed in binary static and collapsed, but Draxil was gone. Only a trail of blood led deeper into the mine. We followed. The tunnels were narrow, hot, claustrophobic. I led, gun raised. Sayalari followed, silent as moonlight. Then we found the chamber.old tech. Massive. A spherical construct hung in the air, alive with runes and energy coils. Inside were bodies, suspended in blue gel, hundreds, maybe more. "Sleeper units," I whispered. "He's been growing them." Sayalari stared, horror in her eyes. "They're not machines." "No, they were once like me." On a platform above, Draxil raised his arm. "Final offer, Rhett. Join us. Save them, or I activate the failsafe and burn every mind in this room." He meant it. The system would overload, frying every neuron in those tanks. "Don't make me do this," I said. "I already have." He pressed the trigger, but nothing happened. Sayalari had already moved. She'd rerouted the control circuits, overriding the override. The tanks began to shut down, peacefully. Draxil screamed and lunged toward her. I tackled him mid-leap, slamming him into the panel. He punched fast and brutal, augmented knuckles cracking my jaw. I grabbed a live wire and jammed it into his side. He jerked, twitched, collapsed. Smoke rose from his chest. His mask cracked. For the first time, I saw his face. Young. No older than Ilrin, just twisted by ideology and scars. Too far gone, I muttered. I turned away. We didn't speak on the way back, not until we saw the dome again, its battered frame outlined against the pink horizon. I should be dead, I told her as we walked, through the gate. You're still choosing life, she said. That is enough. Ilrin ran to us. Tevin clutched my leg. Sayalari kissed each boy's forehead. Then she came to me, eyes shimmering. What now? She asked. I looked at her. At first I thought you came here looking for safety, I said. But I see now, you came offering it. Not to yourself, to me. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She reached for my hand, and this time, I didn't let go. War leaves a kind of quiet behind. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that rings too loudly when your hands stop shaking. That's what hung in the air after Draxil died. After the mines collapsed. After the sleepers fell silent in their glass graves. We burned the last of the override shards the next morning. Brigden stayed just long enough to make sure we weren't being watched, then disappeared again, like she always did, dragging her merc crew off to whatever corner of the galaxy still. Paid in secrets, Ilrin and Tevin asked no questions. They didn't need to. Sometimes, survival speaks for itself. The dome was still damaged, but it stood, scarred, but sheltering. I rebuilt what I could with scrap from the mines. Sayalari helped, her hands calloused from years of raising children and fending off death. Tevin laughed for the first time in weeks when he found an old comm drone and turned it into a toy. Ilrin asked me how to fire my rifle. Not because he wanted to kill, but because he wanted to protect. It's strange watching a child become a warrior. Stranger still, watching yourself become something you never thought you could be. A father. It wasn't love at first sight. What Sayalari and I had, it was built from ashes. From shared silences. From the moments when I woke gasping in the night and found her already holding my hand. From the days she trusted me to guard her sons while she hunted food alone across the irradiated flats. Trust came before anything else. Then, warmth. Then something deeper. Something I don't know a name for in any human language. Maybe the Halveth called it Saranthai. The soul binding. One night after Ilrin and Tevin had gone to sleep, Sayalari sat beside me beneath the fractured sky dome. The stars above blinked through the shield netting. It felt like they were watching. I have dreamed of this, she said quietly. Of what? I asked. A place where I am not hunted. Where my children do not cry in their sleep. Where I do not have to pretend to be strong when I am breaking inside. I didn't know what to say, so I gave her the truth. You don't have to be strong here. She leaned against my shoulder. I want to be, for you. I turned, brushing her silvery braid away from her face. Then be with me. A pause. Then, her lips met mine, soft and sure. It wasn't passion born of desperation. It was something patient, certain, earned. Weeks passed. The dome came back to life. Bit by bit, we restored the systems, grew food in nutrient trays, filtered the air until it didn't taste like rust. The solar coils began to hum again. The commnet chirped. Ilrin built a weather beacon. Tevin named the goats. We weren't just surviving. We were living. But peace is fragile, and the past is never done with you. The message came through a coded ping on an old frequency buried deep in the dome's backup comms. A voice I hadn't heard in years. RX-9 to Spectre Unit 7. Calder, if you're still alive, we need you. The audio was corrupted, but I caught enough. Sleeper programs were still active. A new cell, smarter. No warlords, no armies. Just whispers and subversion. Someone was building a network to finish what Draxil started, only quieter. They were recruiting, and they knew where to find me. I stared at the terminal long after the message ended. Solari stood behind me. "You're leaving," she said softly. "I don't want to."
"But you think you must." "I know I must." She said nothing for a while. Then she stepped forward, placed something in my hand, a worn fragment of carved bone, a pendant in the shape of a double sun. "The Halveth give this to those who
carry our legacy beyond the stars," she whispered. "Take it, but only if you promise me something. Anything. Come back." I left the next morning, alone. Ilrin hugged me without words. Tevan cried. Silari kissed my forehead, then pressed her lips to mine. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a promise. I took the rifle, the knife, and the pendant. I burned coordinates into the dome's memory so I could find my way home, no matter how far I wandered. And then I vanished into the rising light. My name is Calder. Rhett, I was made for war, broken by it, rebuilt by something softer than steel. Love, perhaps, or something that resembles it closely enough. I roam now, hunting shadows, silencing the echoes of an old program that refuses to die. I do it not because I must, but because I promised her I'd return, to the dome, the stars above, and the family who turned a weapon into a man again, because somewhere out there, a woman once told me, "I will warm your bed, human," and for the first time in my life, I believe her.